Well, I think it's a struggle, particularly a struggle in larger organizations. And I think part of the reason why there's been such an extraordinary flowering of small entrepreneurial companies in recent years is that many people feel like that's the best chance they have to explore this side of their thinking. And that I think a lot of this stuff is alive and well in small organizations. And it's why they have been so tremendously important in so many marketplaces in recent years. That there's something about very loose, informal, small, entrepreneurial companies that permits this kind of creative process to flourish. And the real trick to me is for large organizations to learn from that and to try and find a way to mimic the best of being small in a big group. Well, I just think it takes a kind of organization-wide understanding of what it takes to nourish creativity and intuition. And it means not trying to predict everything and not trying to account for everything and not trying to say that everything we do has to be perfectly explained. And I think we need to kind of have a little bit more respect for the mystery of human decision making. And that's the kind of thing that has to take place, instilling that kind of respect has got to take place on a company-wide. It has to be part of the culture. And that's the challenge, because that's hard for large groups to do. The critical fact is that I've been talking a lot about the power of networks, and we are talking about a generation that is more networked than any generation in history. They're much more comfortable with these kinds of quick, casual acquaintanceships, which are enormously useful in a business context. So I do think that we have a generation now that's in a really good position to bring out the best of these kinds of social networks and to apply them in industries and companies that have been a bit too isolated. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity. People doing social network analysis for example, within companies, within knowledge-based companies, where you bring in someone who sits down and talks to lots and lots of people in the company and essentially creates a picture of how conversation flows in that, how information moves, who are central, what kinds of people are playing a central social role in the life of the company. And what you find when you do that is that you're not always aware of who's playing these kinds of key roles, who's being the connector or the maven. And you need to bring special tools to find those people. And I think that's the trick. It's not always easy, it takes some work, but we need to understand that our existing understanding of how institutions and marketplaces work doesn't always shed light on people who are exercising their power through these kinds of informal social networks. And we need to either use the formal tools of network analysis, bring in someone to conduct lots of interviews and to construct kind of the matrix of social matrix of an organization. Or we need to be very careful to train people to be on the lookout for this kind of thing. Because we are aware on some level of who in our social circle is playing these roles, but it just doesn't seem deemed to be relevant, so we often kind of push it aside. Well, there are certainly ones that I hope about. I mean, I think that if we look at our kind of dependence on oil, I actually think that I'm very, very optimistic about our ability to adapt very, very quickly and to dramatically reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. I think that that's a technology will come along, prices will reach a certain point, a technology will come along, and we will be very adaptable. We will find a way, I think, and it will come much more quickly and much more cheaply than I think we envision at the moment. And if you look closely at examples of transformational change throughout history, you become much more of an optimist, I think, about. Well, probably the kind of turmoil in the Islamic world with Islamic fundamentalism, and there it strikes me that there's an awful lot of things going on simultaneously, and some fairly deep-rooted social forces at play here, and which is not to say that I don't have some basis for optimism, but it's not. It's one of those cases where we may need to push and change our approach a lot more than. I mean, there are when you gave the example of our dependence on oil, I really think that's just going to happen. I'm a little less optimistic about something that's seemingly more intractable, like the kind of struggle with trade. Success is doing, from an individual level, success is doing what you love. As simple as that. I don't even think you have to do it well. I just think you have to, or to be rewarded. I think you are successful if you're doing what you love. Failure would just be the opposite of that. It is being forced to do what you do not love, regardless of how well compensated you are or how well the marketplace treats you. That I think that those words are just about individual. They ought to reflect happiness more than anything else.